Arnaud Dubus with Libération newspaper. I didn't get fully the story of the fax asking for $1 billion that was sent by whom to whom?
It's a fax sent by an official of the Malaysian government to the French parts, being Thales, DCN, and so on, saying that they want Perimeka to be involved in the matter, and that they want $1 billion to be given to Perimeka. But once again, this amount has not been paid to Perimeka. It was just a request, but a demand. But what is important is that, I mean, at least in my view, it shows the, how could I say so, the small amount of respect that they have for the law. In the mind of the individual who sent the fax, it meant that they did agree that they wanted to multiply by 2 the costs of the contract just for their own greed.
But the reason for the requesting of the amount was
in order to keep Perimeka into the deal.
Okay.
Hello, Carol Izo from BFM TV. This top official document, the evaluation of the deal, is there any way that it is legal to sell it?
To sell it?
Yes.
I mean, I'm not Malaysian lawyers, so I do not perfectly know Malaysian law, but maybe you can answer on this aspect, or maybe not. I don't know. Yes, or either any legal way to sell this evaluation. Okay. This is a question I mean, at least I can answer in France. In France, it would be completely illegal and no way to sell it. It could either be considered as breach of defense secret or as high treason.
Okay.
And of course it's high treason. I mean, you are just telling a competitors, a foreign country, what you think about a specific weapon and what are your planned use of this specific weapon. It means that this country can know and can deduct out of it what you want to do precisely with this weapon. So of course it's it's treason, at least.
Okay. Another question, you distinguished, you said many times Thales or whatever Thales, or is there, who are we dealing here with when we said the French part? It's Thales, DCNN. Is there any involvement of French officials yet?
So if the question is whether there are some kick commission going back to France, then for the moment there is no evidence at all of this. First, and second, if the question was are there other parts than Thales and DCN and DCNI, then no. But the thing is that it changed a lot during the negotiation and during the real happening of the contract, during the happening of the contract. It changed a lot because first it was Thales and DCN and DCNI, then it has been Armoris, then it has been back to Thales, back to DCNI. So that's why I was saying French part.
Thank you.
Craig Skian. Just in relation to that that last matter, did that document relating to the assessment of the procurement have a security classification in Malaysia? Was it a classified document? First question. Another question is, are Hong Kong authorities cooperating in relation to the company that was formed there for the alleged receipt of commissions or secret commissions? And the other question is in relation to the timetable of the French investigations. Have French authorities sought cooperation from Malaysia to this point? Have subpoenas been considered or issued? When might subpoenas be issued? And what's the timetable for the presiding judge when he might report or either seek cooperation from Hong Kong or Malaysia, or report or make findings?
If I may invite with us today is Mr. Siva Rasaya, a Member of Parliament and also a lawyer from Malaysia, to address the issue which has been raised before in Parliament and also with regard to the nature of the documents involved in this case.
Thank you, Fadia. I think I'll just concentrate on the question raised by the lady journalist. There you are, right. And I think it connects to one of the questions also raised by Craig in relation to the legality, the expose of that top secret document. I think anyone who's familiar with the Malaysian legal system will know that in Malaysia we have probably some of the toughest what you call official secrets legislation in the world, the Official Secrets Act, where in terms of the broad scope of the act makes practically a lot of official documents secret, and any publication of those documents will be a criminal offense punishable by jail. So there's no question that that document, as Mr. Brahim correctly points out, will probably fall in the highest category of secret documents, because that's an evaluation of a defense. It's an evaluation. It's not about tender pricing. It's an evaluation. It'll probably have security implications, and that would be receive the highest level of security. So that would, without any question, be an offense, criminal offense in Malaysia. People have gone to jail in Malaysia for exposing far less innocuous, totally innocuous documents. Yeah. So I think that is the answer to what was raised earlier. Thank you.
So the second and third question were regarding Hong Kong, whether there was a request for international cooperation by Hong Kong, and whether the Hong Kong police judicial system was cooperating. The thing and there was a broader question regarding the timetable. And I will answer all these questions together. Regarding the timetable, legal or judicial time is not human time. What this means is that what seems a long term and a long delay for humans is very quick-paced file at least in the French judicial system. Just let me remind that we filed a complaint in 2010, beginning 2010, I think it was February 2010, and we only had the opening of the official investigation. We had the official opening of the investigation in March 2012. So I cannot give a precise timetable on when the investigation, the instruction to use the French word, will be closed. I can only tell you that there are some cases that have been opened in '95 that are still not closed. Sorry, so it will be between 1 and 20 years. I cannot be more precise, much more precise. Even though we can hope that things should be done should be over in the next 2 to 5 years. That was the first element. Second element, regarding whether subpoena have been issued and whether international cooperation has been requested by Hong Kong. The thing is that I'm held to professional privilege, and that I cannot disclose any elements that are in the file, and only SWARAM can. And the thing is that these elements were not yet in the file when SWARAM came and saw the document. So I'm not allowed to discuss on this aspect. What I can say is I'm allowed to think loud, and I cannot imagine that the judge will not request for international cooperation from Hong Kong. And I cannot imagine neither that Hong Kong will not answer this. But once again, I cannot tell you whether there is or not a request and whether there has had an answer or not. And second, if the judge, on the second point regarding the issuing of the subpoena, if the judge accepted our request for the witness, it is not to let the request sleep on his office, on his desk. So once again, I'm only thinking loud, but it's possible that he will issue the subpoena quite quickly. More highlight on how the French legal system works. This is completely different to either Malaysian or Thai or common law system, we have in the French criminal system what we call civil party petition to a criminal complaint. This means that you have a criminal complaint, and during this criminal complaint there is a civil party that is allowed to be a party to this complaint. And very recently SWARAM has been granted this specific statute. This means that now SWARAM is definitely a party to the criminal complaint, and therefore SWARAM can make what we call demande d'acte. For example, if SWARAM thinks that we should request for the cooperation of the Malaysian police on specific aspects, then SWARAM can write, or ask me to write a request for this to the judge. If SWARAM doesn't agree with the final decision of the investigating judges, then SWARAM can make an appeal. Everything, SWARAM is now a party as important as the alleged perpetrators of the offense, and has the same rights.
Sorry, I have to use a technical word in French because I'm not sure of my low vocabulary in English. That money given to Perimecar to stay in the deal, you say 150 million euros. Is it what we call in French a rétrocommission? Is it a typical case because it refers to other cases of corruption we had in French in the past?
Okay, so rétrocommission is kick commission.
Okay.
And no, this is, when you are seeing the file on the French side, this is not a kick commission, because this, now we have the proof that it has been paid by the Malaysian government at the request of the French parts to Perimecar. So maybe part of it went back to France, but we got no clue of it for the moment, no evidence at all on this, or it might also be stayed in Malaysian hands. We do not know about this for the moment. We have no evidence at all.
David Tuck, I'm, I guess, an industry consultant. I've got a question and an observation. The question's a simple one. Are these submarines actually in service at the moment? And the observation, I guess, is it's laudable to see that the French authorities are looking into this. It's very similar to American FCPA. The UK's got the Bribery Act and all of that. But, I guess one might say the net effect is simply that it makes it much harder for Western companies to do business with countries like Malaysia, who may turn to meet their defence needs from Chinese suppliers or other guys who are less concerned, shall we say, with how ethically deals are done. So, until Malaysia or strengthen their judicial systems, does it actually make any difference in Malaysia? Thank you.
This question's for you.
Yeah, that's a very accurate observation, I would say, because in Malaysia, as we know, when we found out about the commission for the purchase of the submarines in the murder trial of Altantuya, the Mongolian woman, a lot of questions have been asked with regard to this deal, but the MACC, or the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, has failed to commence investigation, even though in the court it's very clear that the very purpose of Altantuya, the Mongolian woman who came to Malaysia at that time, was to ask for her share for the commission for negotiating as a translator for the deal. And later, even in Parliament, when questions were asked to the Prime Minister and also the Defence Minister, no detailed answers were given to the Malaysian public with regard to the deal. And even until now, after the expose and after the case has commenced in court a few months ago, there has been a total silence and blackout with regard to the reporting in the Malaysian mainstream newspapers and also from the government. And recently, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Najib Razak, was asked in a press conference of his response with regard to the subpoena that can be issued to him. He abruptly ended the press conference and said that no comment. And this is the attitude of the Malaysian officials and also the government of the day. And it's worsened because the judicial system is not independent. And a lot of times the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission is used for selective prosecution against the opposition, and there's no independent investigation so far with regard to this case, even though the evidence documents the case is, I mean, it's very clear that they can initiate the investigation a long time ago, but still they have failed to do so. No, apparently it's not functioning, and maybe Sivarasa can elaborate more on how the submarines have failed to work.
Thanks. Actually, I wanted to ask a question as well, but I'll answer this first. Well, they are in service, and that's the answer. Although initially there was a phase that there was some technical problems with the first submarine, in that it could not dive. So we had just bought a submarine that could not dive. You know, that problem resolved after a few months. So now we are quite comforted by the fact that this billion-dollar submarine can dive. It's parked in the deep water port of Sipanga of Sabah. That's where it is. But since you ask about whether it's been commissioned and it's in operation, there's another aspect which is interesting in that the missiles that are supposed to be part of the deal are still not there yet. So I remember mentioning in a public forum once that if suddenly for next week Singapore decided to declare war on Malaysia, God forbid, I mean if it does, but if it did, then our multi-billion-dollar submarine in Sipanga is a sitting duck because it doesn't have the missile components. The missiles are not fully delivered yet. They're supposed to be delivered by 2013. So, but anyway, that's light entertainment on the side of the... yes, I think they are. But can I just comment briefly on the question about does it change anything in Malaysia? Well, this experience we're having with the French courts might of course encourage the government to switch purchasing of arms to other countries. I think that's a possibility if the current government continues to run Malaysia. That's true. But at the same time, I think as what Mr. Brahim has pointed out, and I think this is the concern of many Malaysians, that we are concerned about the use of Malaysian public money, and we're talking about billions of dollars of Malaysian public money, and and the use it has been put for, and that it should not have been put towards corrupt payments. Yeah? This brings me to the question I wanted to ask, because in Parliament, the regular responses to the 115 million euros, because as what Cynthia has pointed out, the public position in Malaysia, in Parliament, only talks about Parimeka. So all we know, or all that has been admitted by the government publicly in response to questions is that yes, about 115 million euros was paid. It was paid by the Malaysian government to Parimeka, and it was paid for services. What were those services? In relation to training, a very vague kind of contract in relation to training of and support services. The disclosure which you have just been made of 36 million euro to this company called Terasasi is has never been mentioned before. So that's the interesting thing about the investigation. What I'd like to ask is whether whether the French investigation has shed any light on the services or the supposed services that were supposed to be provided by Parimeka to the Malaysian government in return for this payment of 115 million euros, which in ringgit terms amounts to about 550 million ringgit at that time.
So first, before answering your question, but I got it in mind, I would just like to broaden on. I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, but to comment on your comments. I think that we can learn one thing of the Arabic Spring. It's that corruption and the use of public money is becoming highly interesting for the public, highly interesting for the people and for the citizens. When you look at Ben Ali's demonstration against Ben Ali in Tunisia or in Egypt or even in Libya, one of the main things that was said and one of the main comments by the citizens was, what the hell, we are in a rich countries, we are living in rich countries, but we do not benefit of it. And one of the things that was the most shocking to at least all the Tunisians I know, or Libyans and so on, was that they discovered how rich their officials, their leaders were. And in this case, I think, but even though I'm getting out of what my role as a lawyer is, but if we make a political analysis, I hope this case can open the eye of Malaysians or Asian citizens to see that, of course, things cannot be compared between Asia and South and Northern Africa, but to see that political leaders, it's not because people are political leaders that they are entitled to pillage the country, to take a part of every rich wealth in the country. And I think, but I might be over optimistic, but I think that this issue, the issue of corruption, the issue of a systematic percentage on every national contract, this issue is becoming really important for most of the countries. We see this in China, we now see this in Malaysia, and it might broaden, it might viruses, okay, I don't know how to say so, but okay. So yes, we now have the contract and so on, but it's not really much clearer, because the thing is, so it's for housing, paying the restaurant bills, for travels and so on. But the thing is that these parts are already covered and took care by the French parts of the contract. So this means that the Malaysian government paid twice for the same thing. And first element, and second element, let's say that let's consider for 1 second, sorry, that the contract was not clearly written, and that in fact there was a division in between the two. I mean that DCN was taking part only of a small share of the housing, travels, and so on. And this would mean that in order to house 156 sailors and to pay for their food and so on and travels for 1.5 years, this would cost 114 million euros. I'm afraid to say that Malaysia could have found a much cheaper travel agency. To put things bluntly, they must have traveled business class twice a day to reach this amount. So that I cannot give you more precise elements, but because there is no more precise element in the file.
I'm Colonel Acha from Royal Thai Armed Forces. Do you have a recommendation how to do it properly, the process of procurement? How would you demonstrate that this is proper use of public funding? I have a feeling you are making a butterfly effect, because what you touch, the military industry complex is very big, and it starts from America, Israel, so many countries. And so apart from finding the fault, and also the environment is full of facility for this kind of thing to happen. You can have Virgin Island, Barbados, Hong Kong, use trustee. Anyway, so what is the proper way, the process for procurement in military? I'd like to hear that. Thank you.
A vast question, and I'm sorry, but a short answer. On whether, first part of the answer, on whether or not Malaysia should buy some submarines, this is a political decision, and that has nothing to do with me. They can do it the way they want. I mean, they can do it or not. It has nothing to do with me. Second, what is the good procurement way? Just the one that respects the law. Any law that is stated I mean, I'm a lawyer, I'm not a politician. Every law that is stated, I will fight for the respect of it. If the law did accept corruption, then okay, do it. If the law does not accept corruption, then respect the law. But what I can say is that the French law prohibits corruption. Therefore, if French arms dealers want to have any contract with Malaysia, they are not allowed to pay any bribe, to pay any commission. So how, and now I know that I didn't really answer your question, and that your question was how to enforce this legal regulation. And once again, I'm sorry to tell you that I'm not a politician, I'm just a lawyer, and of course I got ideas. Of course I know how I got out of experience, I could tell you that you need to have that there is a need for independent judicial system, that there is a need to prohibit tax havens, that there is a need to prohibit bank secrecy. Okay, but this is what everyone knows. And now to tell you precisely how to enforce these, would need 20 years or 20 hours discussion, and just one last point. This is if you really want to have some information on this, I invite you to Toulouse, where I give international criminal law lessons, and this part on corruption lasts for 20 hours. So if you want to come, please feel free. I'll invite you, no problem.
Let me just respond to that. I think that's a very, very important question. It is a question that provokes us to think about what's the best way of doing this. So I think the starting point in this whole thing is that the robbery of the money of the Malaysian people, the scale of the robbery was so shocking that it prompts questions like, what really is the best way to ensure that the procurement is above board. So I think what was mentioned just now really is that the Malaysian Parliament especially has no real say, has no real decision-making power apart from determining the overall budget and apart from conducting debates, etc., on the overall budget. It does not have a bipartisan committee, or it does not have a process in which security policies are debated and discussed from the ruling side and from the opposition side. And I think that's one of the first things that needs to be established, because if Parliament is to ascertain the overall budget, then Parliament should also decide how much of it should go into defense, how many % of it should go into defense, and likewise how many % of it should go into education, into health, etc. And in that regard, the purchasing of equipment becomes very important, because who actually decides? If it's a decision of the Defense Ministry, and that decision is not contested anywhere else and not debated or discussed anywhere else, then we're talking about a very closed system that does not provide for consultation and accountability. So I think these are the first mechanisms that need to be established. First of all, that Parliament needs to have that space to discuss, and that parliamentarians of both sides of the divide need to have a say in what would be our defense policy, what would be the kind of defense equipment we need, and how much money should go into it. And the second thing that needs to be ascertained is that illegal bribes are wrong and illegal commissions are wrong, because these are not supposed to be part and parcel of a procurement process. And so I think it becomes very useful now for MPs in Parliament, not just in Malaysia but everywhere else, to start debating national security and defense policies in a more comprehensive way. And I think this really is an eye-opener to everyone, that so much can go wrong in the name of secrets and security.
Just wondering, normally, more usually in cases of this kind, it's companies who are trying to win contracts who are accused of paying bribes, or in some cases even governments and defence ministries helping their own companies to win contracts by provision of aid or other softer arrangements which might be seen as corrupt. In this case, is the suggestion seems to be that the Malaysian government was using its own funds, which seems to be the reverse of the norm. And is there any suggestion that either the French government or the French shipbuilding company involved may have rerouted some money? Is that a suggestion or something that's being investigated?
First of all, yes, you're right that usually it's the one being selling that pays the commission. But in 2002, France signed, ratified, and enforced OECD Anti-Corruption Convention. And this OECD Anti-Corruption Convention created a new crime under French law, and this crime being to bribe foreign officials. Therefore, the French parts, being the French companies, could not afford to pay themselves. Therefore, they did not, they created, I mean, we can imagine that they create a new way of paying these commissions, and that did not involve them directly.
I thought I'm under the impression that weapon and armament dealing is G to G, government to government. So even though there's a private company involved from France, when Malaysia or Thailand want to buy, we buy from your government, and then the private sector have to supply. So everything is through G&G. Would that work? It's not mean the government pay to the private businessman directly, and then he send money to Hong Kong or Virgin Island as a siphon. It has to be G to G. Isn't that the case? I mean, I'm sure even the military, they gossip about what's happening upstairs, because this kind of thing, it's only...
Sorry, can you repeat that question? Because none of us understood it. Sorry.
G to G means government to government. So if an arms dealer is involved, like they have a defense exhibition, okay, Czechoslovakia, Israel, Poland, whatever. When it comes to payment, the government have to talk with each other, and so the payment go to your government and goods shipped by that government. And okay, the France government pay French company directly, so that's who cut the link for this kind of mishandling of fund. The fund just go to way, it doesn't go crisscross and things like that.
Okay, so first of all, you're right to say that these kind of arms dealing are in fact government-to-government negotiation. Even though it's quite a simplification, because in reality, of course, it needs to be green-lighted by every government, that's for sure. But the French government is not Thales or is not DCN, and DCN and Thales have their own way to do things. And so this does not 100% proves that the French government or even the Malaysian government was fully aware. I mean, the Malaysian government, all of them. Some individuals in the government were involved in the commission and so on, but it doesn't prove that the French government 100% prove that the French government and or the Malaysian governments were involved in the bribes, were fully aware of the bribes, and were receiving directly or indirectly monies from these bribes. Did I answer your question, or? Oh, mechanism to avoid this. Transparency.
Yeah.
Transparency. Just make everything be transparent. Just show every contract by everyone, and it will work. But I'm not really sure that anyone will be very happy about this. But
yeah, maybe I'll just add to that because I think your questions are very important, because you're trying to figure out what's a good way to facilitate and conduct procurement. So it helps us to think as well. I think one of the things that immediately went wrong with with this particular procurement process was that it was in direct negotiations with the French government. So there was no open tender policy to actually look at what could be other possible quotations of submarines that could come from France and Germany and so on, because it did suggest in some of the investigation papers that South Korea, Russia and Germany would be the closest competitors to France. And the Malaysian government decided that in terms of direct negotiations with the French government, there could be a better deal in place. And when you start on this approach, immediately things go wrong, because when you start negotiating directly without an open tender, it means you're taking away the whole element of transparency and the whole element of openness in doing business, and taking away the element of being fair to all parties who could provide a certain service. So I think that was one of the things that is also being hotly contested in Malaysia, because you have, for example, the opposition governments in several states in Malaysia have tried very hard to implement open tender policies as much as possible. And this is a practice which is new and developing in Malaysia, and probably new and developing in many other countries in Asia, because this whole thing about direct negotiation, it's like I will choose to negotiate with my friend rather than see what is the best option out there and what is the best thing I can get from it. So I think one of the things also for the region, for ASEAN and Asia to consider, is this kind of open tender policy promotes good governance and promotes better management of finances and taxpayers' money. So I'm just trying to follow your mind, because I think you're really trying to figure out what would be ideal procedures that would be good for procurement in the future. So these would be some of the things that we need to challenge our government to look at. The more open, the more fair, the more diversity we get in the services that we're looking for.
Share some views on that, speaking from the perspective of an opposition member of parliament in Malaysia. I mean, the gentleman's question about how you handle this issue. I think we have to recognize the reality that defense procurement, especially the huge purchases, are also connected to foreign policy. That's a reality. Yeah? I'll use this specific example of the Scorpion purchases. It's well known at that time that Singapore had purchased the Swedish version. So therefore, Malaysia could not purchase the Swedish version. You had to buy something else. They did not look at the Germans, because prior to that they'd bought some other stuff, big bulk purchases from the Germans. So this time it was going to some, in others, defense is also, there is a connection with foreign policy. These are the realities of it. But having said that, the issue we're addressing is getting fair value for what you buy and making sure that public money is not used corruptly. I think that is the question. And how do you do that? I think we have to recognize that governments buy, that's correct. But the suppliers are not governments. The suppliers are often private companies who make these things. So dealing government to government may not be practical or possible in all situations. I think you've got to go back to basics. What Malaysia lacks, what Cynthia has mentioned, are key fundamental institutions, starting, for example, the fact that we don't even have a defense committee in parliament. We don't have any committees. We don't have a defense committee like the Indonesian parliament has and most modern parliaments have, to monitor the operations of the defense ministry. It's not just allocating a certain amount of money, it's also monitoring how that money is spent. And that's where you need these committees. Malaysia does not have that. So the amount of oversight that our parliament has over defense expenditure is minimal. I would consider it virtually non-existent. You need a defense committee with the ability to summon civil servants, make them explain, and monitor the entire process of spending the money, not just allocating, but monitoring the entire process. Coupled with that, of course, is the other institutions, the media, the judiciary, the overall process, and also a culture of openness. In Malaysia, government functions in a very opaque way. the Official Secrets Act is there, the Sedition Act is there, the media is controlled. So all this contributes to enhancement of corruption. So there is no perfect system. I don't think you'll ever find any country in the world where there's zero corruption, but we have to do our best to reduce it, and these are the institutions that we need, and these are the legal frameworks that we need, and Malaysia has to get going to get there one day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think on that note, we would end our press conference today, and it is upon us, every one of us, to be part of this campaign to end corruption and to advocate accountability and transparency in governance. With that, I would like to thank you once again for coming here, for being present with us. Thank you so much.